We all ask the question, but never aloud, what happens when we die? Not in theory, not in metaphor, but truly, what lies beyond the veil? Across centuries, sages, mystics, and seekers have tried to map this unknown territory. Among them, one text stands out in clarity and depth: the Bardo Thodol, or Tibetan Book of the Dead. A guide not just for the dying, but for the living who dare to look death in the eye and ask, what am I when all else falls away? This journey is not one of fear, but of remembering. Let us walk the path together through light, shadow, illusion, and truth. This is the threshold. What truly begins when life ends? Across centuries and civilizations, humans have whispered questions into the darkness, searching for meaning in the one experience we all share, but none can fully explain: death. Among the many attempts to illuminate this mystery, few are as profound and poetically haunting as the Bardo Thodol, more commonly known in the West as the Tibetan Book of the Dead. This is no ordinary book. It is a sacred guide whispered into the ears of the dying by monks or family members, not to save them, but to remind them of their true nature, of the illusions that will come, and of the choices they still have even after the final heartbeat. It teaches that death is not a wall but a mirror, not the end of the journey, but the most critical passage within it. Written in the 8th century and attributed to the mystic Padmasambhava, the text was hidden for centuries and later revealed as a treasure for generations yet to come. Padmasambhava, revered as Guru Rinpoche, fused the ancient shamanic beliefs of Tibet with the deep meditative insight of Indian Vajrayana Buddhism. What emerged was a radical notion that awareness can survive death, and that the soul, even in the moments after life ends, can still reach enlightenment. Unlike religious texts that focus on judgment or reward, the Bardo Thodol focuses on perception. It teaches that what we see after death is not heaven or hell imposed by an outer power, but the unfiltered projections of our own mind. The divine and the demonic are reflections, mirrors of our fears, desires, attachments, and wisdom. It echoes Carl Jung's idea that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Like Dante's Divine Comedy, which guides the reader through hell and into paradise, the Bardo Thodol is both mythic and psychological. It's not only a guide for the dead, it is a manual for the living, urging us to prepare our minds now while we still breathe, because when the body falls away, what remains is pure awareness. And whether that awareness is liberated or lost depends entirely on our ability to recognize what is real. What begins at death is not darkness but revelation. In the Tibetan tradition, the first moment after death is not silence, it is light. But not the light of the sun or stars. This is the clear light, or osal, the primordial radiance of consciousness itself. According to the Bardo Thodol, every soul, whether saint or sinner, encounters this light immediately after the body dies. It is not a symbol or metaphor. It is a direct experience of the true nature of the mind, unfiltered, boundless, and dazzling beyond comprehension. This is known as the Chikai Bardo, the Bardo of the moment of death. Here, all external distractions vanish. No body, no identity, no thought forms to cling to, only the pure, luminous field that has always been present, but was obscured by ego, desire, and fear. The Bardo Thodol tells us that if one can recognize this light, they can attain instant liberation, known as nirvana. But this is where the paradox begins. For most souls, the light is too overwhelming. Conditioned by a lifetime of clinging to form and familiarity, many interpret it not as homecoming, but as threat. They recoil, not out of evil, but out of fear. The very intensity of the light reveals what the ego cannot accept, that it was never truly real, that there is no self to protect, only awareness itself, infinite and indivisible. This moment mirrors the teachings of mystics across cultures. Meister Eckhart once said, "The eye through which I see God is the same eye through which God sees me." The clear light is that eye looking back. It is the collapse of duality. But as the Bardo Thodol warns, without spiritual preparation, most minds fall back into confusion. They miss the gateway and begin the descent into the next Bardo. Herein lies the purpose of the text, preparation before death. Just as a lucid dreamer must train to recognize they are dreaming, the spiritual seeker must train to recognize the clear light as their own essence. Meditation, self-inquiry, and inner stillness are not rituals. They are rehearsals for this very moment. A moment where you are not judged, but faced with your own reflection in its highest, purest form. And if you do not recognize it, the dream continues. When the soul turns away from the clear light, it enters the Chonyid Bardo, the Bardo of visions. This realm is not physical, it is psychological, symbolic, and raw. Here, the mind becomes the screen, and all that was repressed, desired, feared, or denied begins to manifest in vivid archetypal forms. There are no longer external gods or demons, only reflections, echoes of the self projected with terrifying clarity. The Bardo Thodol tells us that these visions are both divine and wrathful. At first, the soul encounters peaceful deities, Buddhas, bodhisattvas, radiant beings of compassion and wisdom. They offer serenity, guidance, and a last chance to recognize the truth. But for the untrained mind, even beauty can be alien. If the soul does not recognize these forms as projections of its own enlightened nature, doubt creeps in. The mind recoils again. Then come the wrathful deities, terrifying figures, monstrous apparitions, gnashing teeth, burning eyes, voices of thunder. But again, these are not punishers. They are symbolic energies, the anger we've buried, the desire we've denied, the trauma we refuse to face. As the Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche taught, the demons we fear most are not real, but the fear is. And fear in the Bardo becomes form. This stage mirrors the shadow Jung described, a hidden aspect of the psyche that, when ignored, gains terrifying power. But here the soul has one final opportunity. Recognize the visions as mind-made. Realize their emptiness. This is the teaching of Shunyata, the Buddhist principle of emptiness, that all phenomena are devoid of inherent existence, like images in a mirror. For those who maintain awareness, the Chonyid Bardo becomes a school of awakening. Every vision is a lesson, every fear is a gate. But if awareness is lost, if the soul believes the illusions, clings to the peaceful, or flees the wrathful, it will be carried further into the karmic current. And then the cycle turns again. In the final phase, the soul enters the Sidpa Bardo, the Bardo of becoming. By now, the clear light has passed. The visions have faded. What remains is a growing pull, a gravitational force drawing the soul back into form. This is the karma of lifetimes, now in motion, and it does not forget. Here desire returns. subtle at first, then overwhelming, the desire to be, to exist, to feel, touch, love, control, suffer. This desire is not inherently evil, it is simply unconscious. And where there is unconscious desire, there is momentum. Rebirth is no longer a question, it is a certainty unless interrupted by lucidity. According to the Bardo Thodol, in this state, the soul begins to perceive visions of potential births, often seen symbolically as couples in union. These are not literal scenes, but energetic invitations. Each represents a karmic alignment, a life whose lessons reflect the soul's internal state. A mind dominated by fear may gravitate toward a life of constraint. One consumed by pride may enter power and all its traps. Yet there remains even now a sliver of freedom. If the soul can maintain awareness and detachment, it may refuse all visions and dissolve back into the clear light. But this is rare. Most are swept away, pulled by attraction or aversion into the spiral of samsara. The Sidpa Bardo is not punishment. It is law, the law of energetic return. Like attracts like. The quality of one's mind becomes the blueprint of the next incarnation. But even here, there is no finality, only the invitation to become more aware. As the Dhammapada teaches, what we are today comes from our thoughts of yesterday, and our present thoughts build our life of tomorrow. Our life is the creation of our mind. To Western minds, the Bardo Thodol may seem poetic myth, but to practitioners it is a manual of consciousness, grounded in lived mystical experience. And its central teaching is not about death, it is about recognition of the mind's nature, of illusion as illusion, and of the light that has always been there. The Bardos are not somewhere else, they are states of mind, and we pass through echoes of them even in life. The Chikai Bardo in sleep, the Chonyid in dreams, the Sidpa in waking desire. What we fear in death is already here, veiled in routine. As the Upanishads declare, as is your thought, so is your life. As is your life, so is your death. The path, then, is to awaken now, to train in awareness, in presence, in letting go. Tibetan masters encourage meditation not for escape, but as rehearsal, to familiarize the soul with stillness, with silence, with the light behind the eyes. Because when death comes, and it will, your only possession is your state of mind. No titles, no memories, no names, only presence or confusion. The Bardo Thodol tells us this not to frighten but to empower. You are not at the mercy of death, you are the witness behind it. And if you train the mind to meet the light, to see through illusion, to release clinging, then the Bardos become bridges, not chains. And death becomes not the end, but a revelation. So what happens when we die? If the Bardo Thodol is true, not just as doctrine, but as direct perception, then death is the final mirror. The moment we come face to face not with a god or a judge, but with ourselves, vast, luminous, and terrifying in our own depth. The clear light awaits, the projections arise, karma pulls, the cycle turns, and yet throughout it all, a single thread remains: awareness, that which watches, that which chooses, that which is beyond birth and death, form and formlessness. The Tibetan masters never ask you to believe blindly. Instead, they invite you to investigate, to meditate, to become familiar with the nature of your own mind, because in that familiarity lies freedom. As Ram Dass beautifully said, Death is like taking off a tight shoe, and when the shoe is off, you realize you were never the shoe to begin with. The Bardo Thodol is not a superstition. It is a message from those who have peered beyond the veil and returned, not with fear but with clarity, not with promises of heaven but with maps of the inner terrain. It reminds us that the real preparation for death begins now, in how we live, in how we let go, in how we love. And perhaps that's the final truth of the Bardos, not that they teach us how to die, but that they show us how to finally live. We spend our lives avoiding death, but what if death has been whispering to us all along? In every moment of stillness, in every dream that feels too real, in every silence that echoes louder than words. The Bardo Thodol doesn't ask us to fear what comes after. It invites us to wake up now before the last breath, to meet the light before darkness falls, to face our shadows before they become our judges, to love deeply, so that when the final moment comes, we do not cling, we do not run, we remember. Because in the end, it is not about escaping death. It is about recognizing who dies and who never truly did.